So students, I'm starting the topic of coordinate systems. Now, we study geometry. We have studied geometry in class 10th and 8th, 9th, 10th. We have studied geometry. But now we have studied geometry as shapes and figures. We have studied their properties. Now when we try to study geometry with coordinates, with a coordinate system, then we call it as a coordinate geometry. We call it as coordinate geometry. Now, what are coordinate systems? That we will study now. So, now you see this board that you are seeing is a plane. It's a plane. We understand what is a line, what is a plane. Now, I want to study, say there are different points on this plane. And you can put different figures on this plane. Now, I want to study one point with respect to another, so that I will have a reference and I study one point with respect to another. So how do I study that? For that, the first thing we do is we fix one point anywhere in the plane. Okay, we call this point as the origin O. Then, because it's a plane, now to study different points with respect to this point, you can use different methods. One of the methods that is used is consider. So consider two lines. One is a horizontal line, other is a vertical line. Both perpendicular to each other, and this they pass through origin. So we have chosen one point origin. Now through this origin we draw two perpendicular lines. Okay, both are real number lines, which means I will be marking real numbers on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on. All set of real numbers. And here also there are real numbers. 1, 2, 3. I'm just marking natural numbers, but in between all real numbers exist. And both on the negative side, on the other side of the line, you get negative values. Likewise here you get -1, -2, -3, and so on. So this horizontal axis, we call it as the x-axis, and this vertical axis, we call it as a y-axis. This is a way of representing points in a plane. And then we'll start. So now let's say this point, this particular point, I want to study this point with respect to the origin. So origin, first we define the origin. This origin we define as 0 along x axis and 0 along y axis. So these are called as coordinates. The first coordinate is called as the x coordinate, and the second coordinate is called as the y coordinate. This is the x coordinate and y coordinate. Sometimes it is called as abscissa and ordinate, but simple x coordinate and y coordinate. So this is origin is defined by 0, 0. Now I have to define this point. So this point, so to reach this point, I have to go, suppose I have to reach this point. So first I have to go some distance along the x-axis. So let's say this is 1.3. Okay, this distance is 1.3 along x-axis. So the x coordinate of this point will be 1.3. And then I have to go to reach this particular point. I have to go along x this distance and along y this distance. So what is this distance along y? So see the representation now, the distance 1, 2, 3, let's say 3.4 here or 3.4. So y coordinate is 3.4. So to reach this point, we go along x 1.3, along y 3.4, or you can also go first 3.4 along y and then 1.3 along x. All right. So in any case, this first coordinate is the x coordinate, second coordinate is the y coordinate. So like this, now we can define all these points in a coordinate plane, in this particular plane. This is 10 comma slightly less than 2, 2.5, let's say. This point is 10 comma 2.5. Now this one may be 11, 12, 13 comma 4. This point will be say 4.6 comma 4. No, comma 3.4, like that. So like that. So now by this arrangement, we are able to represent all the points in the plane, no matter which point you choose in the plane. You can represent with a unique coordinate. You can represent them with a unique x coordinate, comma y coordinate. So this gives us a very beautiful way of representing points in a plane, and we can use you can study all geometrical properties using these coordinates. This coordinate system, this particular coordinate system is called as the rectangular Cartesian coordinate system. This is called as the rectangular Cartesian coordinate system. All right. Why it is rectangular? Because the angle between the two axes, x-axis and y-axis, is 90 degrees. That is why it is called as the rectangular Cartesian coordinate system. Now there are other methods to represent coordinate system. You can study the whole coordinate geometry in other fashion, which is not so popular. I'll just discuss that. There you can choose 2 lines. Okay, one is a horizontal line, other is an oblique line. Okay, now this particular line has an associated angle. So these two lines have, this is the basic reference axis, this is the another reference axis. In the Cartesian coordinate system, you had both of these lines perpendicular, but in this system you have oblique. Now any point in this plane can be represented with x comma y point. However, what will be x? You have to draw a line parallel to the oblique axis. Okay, and you have to draw a line which is horizontal here. Okay, this is the origin in this coordinate system. This will be your distance x. You go x distance along the x-axis and y distance along the y-axis. All right, x distance along the x-axis and y distance along the y-axis. But the along the y-axis, parallel to the y-axis is inclined. Okay, this particular coordinate system is called as oblique Cartesian coordinate system. All right, this is called as a oblique Cartesian coordinate system. What now? This, however, because of this particular angle, each time we have to worry about this particular angle. So this, although in principle you can plot any point on the plane and you can give assign coordinates to it, but this particular coordinate system is not very popular. All right, so although right now we have just introduced it, again we don't study this at all, but you should know that this kind of Cartesian coordinate system exists. Next, there is another coordinate system. In this coordinate system, you start, I have to identify points in a plane. I have to mark, I have to take one reference point. So there is a reference point. Okay, and this reference point is origin, and there is a reference line. Okay, there is a reference line. It's a horizontal reference line. How to mark, let us say this point I have to assign coordinates to. How will I assign coordinates to this point? I will join these 2 points. Okay, let's say this point is P. The coordinates that I will assign to this point P are OP is R. What is OP? The distance between the origin and this point. This is R. And this is the reference. This is the reference axis. This is the reference axis. So with the reference angle, the ray OP, let's say it makes an angle theta. Then this point is represented as R comma theta. This point is represented as R comma theta. Again, so this point in a plane is represented by the distance of this point from the reference point origin. and the angle that this line OP, or ray OP, makes with the reference axis, that is theta. So we represent a point with r comma theta. This particular representation is called as the polar coordinate system. So 3 coordinate systems we have studied. What are they? So the first coordinate system is a rectangular Cartesian coordinate system in which the 2 axes are perpendicular to each other. All right, and there is x-axis and y-axis, and all the points are represented with respect to x-axis and y-axis, x and y. So any point here means that I go this much distance along the x-axis and this much distance along the y-axis. That means from the origin along the x-axis, if I travel this much distance, that will be x coordinate, and in the perpendicular direction along the y-axis, if I travel it, I'll get the y coordinate. So this is the Cartesian, rectangular Cartesian coordinate system. Then we discussed the oblique Cartesian coordinate system, in which there are 2 axes, just like rectangular Cartesian coordinate system, intersecting at origin. However, they are oblique, they are inclined. This particular coordinate system we don't use very often. Next, we study, third one we studied was the polar coordinate system. In the polar coordinate system, we represent a point with respect to the origin in terms of its distance and the ray, the angle that the ray OP makes with the reference axis. Now this polar coordinate system is very useful in solving some of the problems in physics and engineering. Whenever there is a circular problems, this we will study further. There is a topic called as polar coordinates in the class 11 and class 12. But the whole of coordinate geometry that we study is based on the rectangular Cartesian coordinate system.